terms of politics, we should always be finding ways to bring people together. So any sort of message that is dividing people, and particularly dividing them along racial lines, is not the type of politics that we want to engage in. We want to find ways to find those links and those common connections, the bridges between people, and I think that's what we should focus on.
That's NDP leader Jagmeet Singh speaking to the Nationals' Rosemary Barton. He was reacting to his Liberal competitor dropping out of the Burnaby South by-election today after bringing Singh's ethnicity into the campaign. On social media, Wang had urged constituents to vote for her, the only Chinese candidate, versus Singh, who she noted is, quote, of Indian descent. You can watch Rosemary Barton's entire conversation with Jagmeet Singh this Sunday on The National. For reaction to this story, I'm joined by Ujjal Dosanjh, a former Liberal MP and Health Minister. He's in Vancouver today. And Olivia Chow is a former NDP MP, and she joins us from Toronto. Mr. Dosanjh, I'll start with you because you are in BC right now. What did you make of Ms. Wang's comments?
Well, I thought they were inappropriate. These kinds of comments are made in many communities. Sometimes they're caught and sometimes they're not. So I don't think that Karen Wang is an exception in this regard. It's not. People don't necessarily say, well, the other person is Indian or white, vote for me because I look like you. But people usually say, well, I'm one of you, I know you better, vote for me, rather than saying, I'm the best candidate, I look like you and I speak your language as well, that might be a bonus, but vote for me if you think I'm the best candidate. I think that's the standard that we should have, and it isn't sometimes in some communities.
Ms. Chow, do you agree with that statement that that perhaps Ms. Wang is not an anomaly here and that this happens more often than we think?
Well, it's very divisive, that comment saying, vote for me because of my race, rather than, I get what you're experiencing, you're waiting for a long time to sponsor your parents, and years, and your parents can't meet your newborn baby for 8 years. You know, connecting because of the issue, that's important. Rather than saying vote for me because of my race and don't vote for the other guy because he's of a different race. I hope it is not that often. I have not seen it so explicitly up front. The last time I saw it was in the mid-80s in a municipal election. But to put it on WeChat, which is like a WhatsApp, it's social media, and calling people out to come to the lodge, to come and vote for me because of my race, I think it's just not acceptable. Now, we do know that immigrants, in terms of voter turnout rate, is lower generally. So it is important to get new immigrants to vote, to participate in democracy, but that's not the way to do it.
Ms. Chow, I'm going to ask actually both of you this question, but I'll start with you, Ms. Chow. By making Jagmeet Singh the other in this appeal, is what she did racist?
Well, the word racist can mean all types of things, but one of the things that being to hurt another person, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, it's hurtful, and especially if it's based on race. So I don't necessarily need to call it whatever it is. It is just not acceptable. And remember, Mr. Singh is the first leader that Canada has that is from a racialized community. He himself had been bullied, has been discriminated when he was a kid, when he was a teenager. He came from a poor family that he had to struggle and to find housing for his family. So when we have someone running for office, especially as a leader, what we need to do is to remove the barrier. And I think it's up to the Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau, to come out clearly and say that Mr. Jagmeet Singh's race should be out of bound. It should not be any part of the conversation because it's just not acceptable.
Mr. Dosanjh, I'd like to ask you that same question. Do you think that by casting Mr. Singh as the other, is that racism?
You know, the othering of anyone is absolutely improper. When it's done based on ethnicity or race or faith, we can call it generally racist, of course. If it were done by a white supremacist, it would be racist. If it's done by a person of color, it's racist. And that, I think, is a problem. And when Olivia says that these kinds of things perhaps don't happen in the open, no, they don't happen explicitly in the open, but they do happen in the background, in small meetings. I remember back in 1979 going to sign up membership for my NDP nomination provincially, and the chap who happened to be a Punjabi Indian basically said to me, "I'm going to vote for you because you're one of us." And I had to stop him right there. Look, I want to sign you up, but if you're going to vote for me because I'm Indian, please don't. I want you to vote for me because I perhaps am the best candidate. And I think this is one of the problems that we actually, particularly amongst newcomers, because we're talking about immigrants, we're not really concentrating on teaching each other the political culture, the political ethics, the Canadian values, the Canadian ethics around politics, and how do we do politics in Canada. And that, I think, is a problem.
Ms. Chow, speaking of how you do politics in Canada, when you ran, you did outreach to the Chinese community in Toronto in your riding when you were an MP. Where is that line between outreach and what we've seen happen over the past 24 hours?
Well, outreach is very different by perhaps translating the literature, having town hall meetings in a different language, and having ballots that have numbers so that if the person cannot read that language, they could still vote, by engaging the community to talk about issues, especially whether it's housing or immigration or any number of issues that matter to them specifically to that community. All of that is important, but it completely crossed the line when you say, just vote for me, not because of that I can represent you and do something about things that you care about, is because of just my race. That's not acceptable. And I think it's important that it's up to parliamentarians and people that are involved in trying to encourage democracy by taking the extra effort, and maybe Election Canada can do that in the upcoming October election, is that let's go to the different communities and speak to them about participating and take that extra effort, because we do know that the voter turnout in some of the communities are lower than others.
This is a question I want to ask both of you. This message was sent using a Chinese language social media app. How difficult does it for the parties or for anyone who's regulating the election campaign to sort of to monitor all of these different social media avenues, whether it's a Chinese language app, whether it's another form of social media in upcoming campaigns? Mr. Dosanjh, can I get your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think it's rather difficult, and that's why you see most committee rooms now have campaign workers from different linguistic groups, different ethnic groups, so that they can translate political stuff happening on WeChat or in Punjabi media or in Telugu media or whatever else, whatever other languages there might be. And it is somewhat difficult, but we are a diverse country. People in Canada speak many languages. We speak languages of the world, and we have cultures of the world. We're going to have to become experts at actually, crossing these bridges and bringing people together and having diverse committee rooms so that we can deal with these things.
Olivia, last response to you, and we have about 20 seconds left.
Well, WeChat is very popular. It's not that difficult, and I think every party needs to take that extra effort to engage Canadians of different backgrounds, a diverse background, especially I think in the Indigenous community, because their voter turnout rate is also very low. So the higher percentage, the better that we are as Canada, as a strong country, if democracy remains strong. But divisiveness, what we just saw, is not acceptable.
Olivia Chow, Ujjal Dosanjh, thank you so much, both of you, tonight.
Thank you.